Hi, everybody. I'm Ann Dolin, and today we're talking about having a summer of success. If you're like most parents, you might be feeling like you're kind of between a rock and a hard place. Meaning that, on the one hand, you want your kids to have this carefree summer, to just be re energized and not to have a care in the world. But on the other hand, you're thinking if they don't do a little bit of reading, writing, or math, they may not go back to school prepared, especially after a year of suspect learning. And furthermore, you don't want to be the heavy handed homework police where you're having to nag, poke, prod, cajole to get your kids to do something over the summer that doesn't have to do with their phone or video games. So, what's a parent to do when both options aren't that great? Do nothing or have this heavy handed approach? Well, here's what I can share with you that after 23 years of helping kids and families, and that means 23 summers. And collectively, my coaches and I have worked with over 10,000 students. But the way in which we approach this summer, especially this summer, will have a profound effect on the way kids present in the fall. So I propose that this year we have a summer of intention. And it's different than other summers because this year was totally different than any other year. So this summer, instead of floating through June or July with these goals and ideas of what we want to do and coming up to August without much getting done, we're going to structure things differently this summer. And it's going to be one that our kids are going to remember because they come up with the learning activities. So in order to do that, we're going to have to improve our kids' summer GPA. And GPA actually doesn't have to do with grade point average. It's actually three elements of success. These are three tools. So for the next 25 minutes, I want to share with you these three tools that can make a big difference on how confident, engaged, and ready to learn our kids are in the fall. Now, the first two tools actually have to do with personal development. They have nothing to do with academics. But don't worry, I promise I'll get to the academics. That's actually the third element for success. So here's the first one. It's called Go for Goals. This is actually a family activity that has to do with goal setting. Then the P in GPA is plot the path. Goals are great, but there needs to be an action item or two behind them. So we're going to plot out what our kids will do and what we will do to get our goals accomplished. And lastly, that's where the academics comes in. This is called activities for action. Okay. So let's get started and begin with Go for Goals. This is probably one of my favorite things to do with kids and with families in general. To do it, you're going to need a few things. You're going to need a stack of Post-it notes. You're going to need some pens. Each person gets a pen. Ideally, if you have a whiteboard, that's fabulous. If not, no worries. Get a big piece of poster board, construction paper, or just have a blank wall somewhere in your house. And then you're going to need a phone because you're going to need a timer. So you're going to gather everybody in your family together and you're going to say, let's talk about the summer. And I would say do this, before school gets out, definitely, probably at the beginning of June, and set aside about 45 minutes to make sure you have plenty of time. So what you're going to do when everybody's together and everybody has a little stack of Post-it notes in their pen, you've got the whiteboard set up with everybody's names on it, you're going to say, what are the things that you want to do to learn and grow this summer? What are the things you want to do, the things that you want to accomplish? And then you're going to set a timer for 4 minutes. Everybody furiously writes down what they want to do. And then one at a time, each person gets up to share. You might have to model a few things, especially if you have younger kids in the beginning. But I found that kids are actually so creative. When I first started doing this with students, I was worried maybe they'll be resistant or they won't come up with ideas. But actually, that hasn't been the case at all. So this is my friend Michaela. She's actually my friend from college, and I did this with her family, and my other friend Amy. And she got up first. And usually, when parents go first, they say things like, well, I want to read these 3 books that have been on my bookshelf, or I really want to plan a vacation for just me and my husband, something like that. She got up and she was just so vulnerable from the start. And she said, I want to yell at my kids less. I want to enjoy them more. And she said, and I want to meditate more. And just those two things off the bat, it just resulted in this really awesome conversation with everybody, especially her kids. So that's what happens. Everybody gets up and goes, and you want to make sure that it's super positive. The reason we're doing this is for kids to come up with their own ideas. But if they at all feel judged by us, they will shut down and they won't participate. So even if your child comes up with a completely off the wall idea that you're thinking there's no way they're going to do it, don't worry about it. It's okay. Just say, wow, it's interesting you thought of that. How creative. I love the thought process behind that one. Cheer each other on and make sure that you're a coach and not a critic. So here's what your board might look like at the end. Because once everybody's gone, you're going to ask another question. You're going to say, what are your top two goals? And then one at a time, each person will go up. They'll move. There are two things that they really want to accomplish, and they'll put those at the top. And then they'll share with everybody why they picked those things. I said, I am a runner, but I said that I wanted to actually compete in 2 sprint triathlons this summer. Catherine said that she wanted to get her driver's license and get a summer job. Pat said that he wanted to shoot under 80 in golf. William said he wanted to plan a Major League Baseball trip, which was awesome because the 3 families had actually been on a few trips before. We'd gone to Major League Baseball parks, but he said the 2 that we haven't gone to are Pittsburgh and Cleveland, and that he was gonna plan the whole trip out from the budget to the time away to booking the hotel. Talk about, really putting your academics to work. It's a great project for him. And Amy said she wanted to create a website for her business. So what's so awesome about this is you can do it with kids of any ages. These are kids from actually 2 different families. And one of the boys, the older boys, said that he's been trying to catch a snook. They live in Florida. And these snook are very elusive, apparently. And he said that he wanted to research snook and he wanted to figure out what type of bait, time of day, area, time of year that would be best to catch a snook. And that was his goal, one of his top goals for the summer. Even the 4-year-old participated, and she said she wanted to smell more flowers. It was adorable. All right, so now everybody has their goals that they've created, not us, but our kids. And now we're going to plot the path. So here's what it looks like when you plot the path. I actually created these worksheets for everybody. And this is Catherine's example. Now, granted, she's a 9th grader, but she said she wanted to get her license by mid-August. So she took that final goal and she broke it out into smaller chunks. And this might be a little bit hard for younger kids, like elementary kids. So you might need to guide them like, oh, when do you want to have that final goal done? Let's jot that down. What might be your first step? What might be your second step? But I love this activity for kids of all ages because it fires up their executive function skills. This is something most students have a hard time with, especially if you got a kid with ADHD. They don't plan ahead. So this allows them to practice planning ahead on something that they're super motivated about doing. So that when they have a test or a project due in 2 weeks in the school year, they'll have a sense of how to do it because they've had a good experience with it too. So I created this worksheet, as I mentioned, and all the instructions for Go for Goals. And if this might be helpful for you, you can get it by texting 55444 and just type in summer GPA and make sure you don't leave a space, just make it all one word. All right, so you got your goals, you plotted a path, but you're a little bit worried that your kids may not follow through. What do you do about that? Well, I encourage you to have a Sunday session. The idea behind the Sunday session is that you get together in a family meeting once a week, ideally Sunday nights, because you can prepare for the week ahead, and you're going to ask, how did your week go? So this is the time where you're going to have your whiteboard out so everybody can see what they picked. You'll have your worksheet so they can see what they wrote down. And you're basically asking the question, oh, how's it going? And it's a time for kids to report on what they've done and for you to report on what you've done and what you're going to do in the week ahead. Inevitably, one of your kids isn't going to follow through. And it may be your natural inclination to say, Why didn't you do this? You said you were going to finish it, but you didn't do it. But no, again, this is an activity that should be super fun to build trust with our kids and to get our kids re-engaged and um, activating their brains when they've been probably turned off to learning in the last year. So we want it to be completely benign. So instead of asking that, you might say something like, well, what got in your way? And if your child says, oh, I ended up playing Xbox till really late last night, you might say, oh, tell me about that. This week, how could you get around it? So ask, put the ball in their court, ask what they might do differently the coming week. Kind of like this question, looking ahead, how much do you approach this week? Or what's the first step you might take? Or what day do you want to start this? These are all powerful questions that get kids thinking, again, firing up their executive function skills to look ahead and look in the future and solve their own problems so that we give them some sense of responsibility and we're not solving everything for them. So now we have two tools for intentions. We have go for goals and we have plot the path. But the reality is that many kids are going to need some academic practice. And that's where activities for action comes in. Now, with activities for action, you're going to pick, do you want your kids need help in math, reading, or writing? And what I would recommend is that you pick one or maybe two, but you go about it in a very simplistic way. So let's say you pick math. What I would recommend is thinking and being very intentional. What do I want my kids to do in math? What is a skill that they need? Let me share with you a couple of resources that could be helpful. One is called IXL, and this is an online platform that's adaptive. So if you click like pre-algebra, the lessons will be on pre-algebra, and when your child doesn't understand something, the software will realize they're getting this wrong and will stop and practice those skills with her or him. Now, for younger kids, consider something like Archidemics, which is a video game-based platform just for math. So it's fabulous, especially for elementary kids. And kids even that hate math are willing to do this. But what I would recommend, again, is to be super targeted, especially in math. And think of what is it that your child needs to work on. Instead of, my child's going to learn all fourth grade math, that's too overarching. Maybe it's just multiplication and division, and they're just going to practice their facts to develop fluency over the summer. Maybe they don't have a good handle on fractions, decimals, and percents, which, by the way, are super important because they are the proving ground for pre-algebra, which is the foundation for algebra. And Algebra 1 is the foundation for everything in high school. So you want to make sure your child's tight with those skills. So I bring this up because often parents will go online to Amazon or go to Barnes and Noble and they'll get like the summer bridge activities workbook. And I found that they're not that great for kids, especially struggling learners, because they ask the questions and the activities are about everything. And sometimes they haven't seen all that information and it just becomes frustrating. So when things are targeted and there are things that your child can do, like multiplication and division, it's going to just be a lot easier so that you can get your child to do it without you being involved. So if you're not sure what to practice, ask the teacher. Say to the teacher, you know, if there's one thing Jimmy could work on this summer, what would it be? And that's an easier question than asking the teacher, tell me what Jimmy should do this summer. It's kind of overarching, especially in a subject like math. I like the one thing approach. It's just much more doable for parents. When we work with kids in math, we'll also take the review preview approach. So we'll review the main concepts they really need to master the year before, and we'll preview what's coming up. And for many kids, that is the golden ticket, because when they go back to school, they feel so prepared, so confident because they've seen a little bit of this stuff. They're on top of the world. So in the end, keep it short and easy. You only need to do about 15 minutes a day. That's it. It should be independent work. It shouldn't be work where they're always asking you for help. That's no fun for you or for your kids. And ideally, these should be consecutive days: Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. If you can't get your kids to do 5 days, do Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday right in a row. And set up a plan early in the summer. You know, it's okay if you say, you know what, my kid needs a break. We're going to start this in 2 weeks. But what I would recommend before summer even starts is to sit down with your kids and say something like, okay, your teacher said you need to practice fractions. You can either do IXL or you could do this workbook. What do you choose? You might say you could start this at 9 or 9:30. What's best for you? So now you have their buy-in a little bit. They're still going to do the academics, but you've had a discussion and you also discussed the start date. So it's super clear when the start is starting, it's in writing and put it up on your refrigerator. So nobody says, you didn't tell me that, Mom. All right, so let's shift gears and talk a little bit about reading and writing. So writing, one of my favorite places to work on writing, especially for reluctant writers, is a YouTube page by John Spencer. He's a former middle school English teacher. And he's actually created all these video prompts for kids that are so fun. Even kids that hate to write, they will do these. And you watch a video, and then you have to come, usually about a superhero or a very controversial prompt, and you have to come up with an ending or you have to write about it. For reading, what I can recommend is considering a writing journal. And I actually learned about writing journals when I was in high school. My art history teacher, who I loved, had us writing writing journals every Monday. She would get out the writing journal and we'd talk about our weekends. And although it had nothing to do with art history, I loved it because I really got to know her. She got to know me. And I look forward to that every Monday. And she never criticized anybody's grammar or their sentence structure. It was just really a get to know you thing. And then when I was a teacher, I did this with my students every Monday, every grade that I taught, and I loved it. You can do this with your kids too. So it can just be a composition book you get. And you might write to them about, something that happened that day. Oh, I saw that you passed the ball to Billy and then he scored. He was open at such a strange angle. How did you know to pass it to him? And then your child writes back to you. But again, you don't want to critique writing, like sentence structure, grammar, spelling, handwriting, nothing. Your goal is just to earn trust and have fun with your child. And they can even just draw pictures. At the end of the summer, you just have this wonderful keepsake. And then an easy thing you can do for reading is always have subtitles on, especially when you're using a streaming service. Subtitles are really helpful in reading development. And in fact, the original research on subtitles was done by a fellow named Robert Vanderplank out of Oxford. And he found that when kids had subtitles on in their language, that they improved their vocabulary and their comprehension. So that's an easy win. If you want your kids to read more traditional books, obviously look at the book list that the school sends out. And at the very beginning of the summer, don't wait till August, pick a book with your child. If there's not a book on there that they want to read, go to Amazon. It has actually a very robust query, and you can type in things like books for reluctant readers in middle school, books for middle school girls who love horses, and up will come all these options for kids. And then lastly, if you have a super reluctant reader, but they're willing to listen, consider an audiobook. They're not cheating. Audiobooks also help kids to develop comprehension in their vocabulary. So they can be a win-win for kids. At the end of the day, our kids are going to be more willing to do work if it's at specific times. We know that there are 3 stages of timing in the day that determine our level of motivation and energy and focus. And they're generally the same for adults and kids. We know that everybody is freshest in the morning and you get better and better until lunchtime. And that's why every school in America, every public school gives standardized testing in the morning. Kids are freshest and they get the best scores. But around 3 o'clock, we all experience this trough. And a trough is really bad. A trough is when we want to grab a cup of coffee and when our kids reach for TikTok or Instagram or a video game because they just want to chill. The good news is we all experience a recovery at around 5. But the reason I bring this up is that if you want your kids to do work in the summer, pick times that they're going to be their best. When my kids were little, I always had them do workbooks in the morning. I would dog ear pages, like 3 pages, and I would have them do like every other problem or the top half of a math worksheet, for example. And they always did that before they left for camp or to go play with their friends. So think of a time of day that's going to work for your child and really execute on it. And then lastly, if you feel that your child's going to be reluctant working with you, outsource it. And sometimes, or I shouldn't say sometimes, but lots of times over the years, parents have said, my child's just not interested in this. And actually, that's not true. Kids do want to learn. It's just that sometimes they don't want to learn from their parents, but they're more than willing to work with somebody that they really enjoy, that they like, that they have a good rapport, and that they think is an expert in their field. So for that reason, it's fine to find somebody else, and it doesn't have to cost a lot of money. It could be the college student who's home from break down the street, or it could be a professional tutor, which is what we do, or a coach that works on executive function skills. And that can weave that into the summer, maybe use the review preview method and get kids prepared for the fall, but don't take on the burden, always feel like it has to be you. So as we wrap up, I will remind you that you can get any of the resources I talked about by texting 55444 and the word summer GPA. I have my contact information here. I'm great on email. If you have a question about your child, I will get back to you right away. My email is ann@ectutoring.com. And we have tons of resources actually on our website, which is ectutoring.com. So at the end of the day, honestly, there is no need to be stuck between a rock and a hard place when it comes to the summer. If you go for goals, plot the path, and have activities for action, you will have a summer of success. Thanks so much for listening, everybody, and I wish you all the very best in the months ahead. Bye-bye.